Today's video is going to feature one of the greatest chess battles that you have ever seen, played between Nate Hill with the white pieces and Leslie Fu with the black pieces as part of the Chess.com Twitch Rivals PogChamps event. A friendly reminder before we get started that both of these players started chess about a month ago, and so while the game is going to have some mistakes in certain moments, we're going to try to make it instructive and still provide some quality entertainment for everybody involved. So let's just jump right into it. Nate Hill starts out the game with a London system, and the players get out to this position from the opening, okay? Both castled, both developing all of their minor pieces and playing in the center exactly as their coaches have advocated. But here Nate Hill makes the first potentially questionable decision and backs the bishop up for a second. Now, what Nate should have done here, and kind of an instructive moment right off the bat, right after you get fully developed, you've got all your pawns out, your pieces out, you're castled. What's a good way to proceed? Well, you should maybe look for pawn breaks. And an instructive pawn break as early as this position is the move e4. This already puts black in a bit of an uncomfortable situation, because if black doesn't take the pawn, white pushes forward, forking both of these pieces. If black does take the pawn, then white recaptures with the knight, with pressure on this bishop, pressure on this knight, and all of a sudden the open rook on the e-file with the queen on the opposite sides. Not to mention the fact that black loses a pawn in the center of the board. But after bishop f4, the players traded, and here, Fuslie in the same kind of situation, not really sure what to do here because there's so many pawns on the board. How do you begin to make progress in this position? Hops the knight into the center, and white simply picks up a pawn. A good weapon here would have been to maybe play the knight to h5, putting pressure on f4, or even begin some active operations on this side of the board. Remember, the kings have castled on opposite sides, and for that reason, you can actually start to open these lines for the rooks to come down and put pressure on the king on the opposite side. But we get to this position, g6, c3, f6, bishop d3. Nate Hill, kind of like a point boxer. He's not trying to throw any punches. He's trying to be as solid as possible, play quickly. And Fuslie, in her attempts to kind of stir the pot, stir up some trouble, plays e5. But once again, this is a moment where white's got 4 attacking pieces on that square and is able to pick up another pawn and get to this position. Now, when you're up material, you've got 2 ways to play for a victory. Number 1 is simplify the position to an endgame. Number 2 is to just start a massive attack. Nate Hill goes for number 1. He trades the pieces, plays a nice solid move h3 for his king. Leslie plays h5, queen d2, and now a peculiar move, rook e6, actually running into a central pawn fork, but in his infinite attempt to simplify the position, a perfectly good strategy, Nate Hill trades off the rooks, and we get this position. Now, g5 is a very aggressive move, trying to mobilize the pawns. I wish black was doing this a little bit earlier in the game because of the opposite side's castling of the kings. And from this point forward, both players started to get close to time trouble. It was a 10-minute game to begin with. They already made it out about 25 moves. And just a fair warning for those of you watching, things are about to get crazy. And if you're a chess purist, you might want to look away or back up from the monitor because it's about to get wild. First things first, Nate Hill busts out d5, which looks like a central fork, but Fuslie can just take right here. And instead she backs up the knight. So Nate grabs the piece and plays queen c1, but his queen is so strong! He should be looking for a queen trade or potentially getting the queen further into the territory. Queen c1, and now knight f4, attacking the bishop, an excellent move, but in his attempts to move the bishop from danger, Nate blunders knight e2 check. We have to blunder check. You have to look for actual checks for your opponent right before you make a move, and disaster strikes. But Fuslie plays g4, attacking the knight. Still a good move, but not the best. And now g3, counter-attacking the knight. And because she saw that her knight was under attack, she was able to come up with this move. All of a sudden, the queen is lost. All of a sudden, the knight is lost. King e1. The game should be over in a few moves. All Fuslie has to do is take this pawn with check, get in with the queen. And here, another crazy move. Queen c6. Oh my goodness. Right in the line of the bishop. But Nate plays check. And after king b8, king d2, now Fuslie's back at it. She gives a check. She brings in the queen. She brings in the queen again, picking up some pawns. Pushes and makes a second queen, and for a moment has an 18-point advantage. Now, obviously this is the part of the game that's supposed to be entertaining. Both players at this point had about 30 seconds. Nate had about a minute, I think, with the white side. There's 5-second bonus. Now, the way you just win this game is you bring both the queens as close as possible to the king and you look for checks. And she did that right up until here. She had to spot queen f7, which was decisive. Checkmate is either coming like this, or like this, and it's, or excuse me, or like this, and it's over. But here, in trying to pin the bishop to the king and in a deep time trouble, she allowed Nate to promote a queen and continue to run up the board with his king. She grabs the bishop, queen g7, again, a moment where you can just take the queen, get in front of the pawn, easily winning. But in trying to hunt him down with the queens and make moves to not lose on time, she blundered her own queen, and she's still winning. After a little bit more shuffling, all of a sudden, it looks like Nate is the one who's going to promote another queen. And he actually managed to do so, bringing the queen to secure the promotion square, and all of a sudden we go from 2-0 to 1-0. Or 0-1, or however you want to look at it. I told you this game was going to be crazy entertaining. Let's keep it rolling. Now, Fuslie's the one trying to make a queen. Nate swoops in, queen c8 prevents the pawn from going any further. King b6, the king's gotta come help. Both kings running, and she tries to sneak the pawn past the queen, but Nate brings the queen all the way down and takes. Now here, of course, knight b4 was the best move, but taking the knight. Now this is a this is a theoretically winning endgame for white. Whether it's 1 pawn or 2 or even 3, the queen is just simply too powerful. But you've got to keep bringing your king. And here, Nate did a pretty smart thing. He checked and was supposed to pick up this pawn. Instead, he brought his king, which is fine. He brought his king again. And after a3, he's got a moment here where he had to take this pawn or play here, and it's mate. But because his last move, he was looking at b6, he decided to take the pawn. So a little bit of tunnel vision here, something beginners do struggle with, but queen b6 played, queen b5 obviously a perfectly good move, queen a3 totally a perfectly good move, but as Grandmaster Ramon Hambleton says, when you see mate in 1, look for better. Queen b6, king a4, and now sliding the queen back 1 square, this little dynamic. Beginners like to keep a distance with their pieces, because, you know, the mechanics of attack and defense are not as automatic. Queen d4, king b3, and now a good way to play a queen versus pawn endgame. Get the queen on the promotion square. Just put it there, bring the king. But again, both players at this point deep in time trouble. And after allowing the pawn to get to a2, queen d4, king b1, queen d1, king b2, tries to bring the king, but the pawn promotes. The final pawn promotes. How many promotions did we have? How many queens were there in this game? And after a quick set of checks, the queens were traded. And both players reached the position, king versus king, and the game was drawn. A fascinating back and forth. I think maybe the first draw of the entire PogChamps event. A game where white was winning, followed by black was winning, followed by white was winning, followed by, I'm not even sure at this point how many evaluation swings there were. But listen, with 2 players competing in this event, and having learned chess just a month ago, just both under 50 games of practice overall, there was still instructive moments for all of us, a ton of entertainment, and we can't thank them enough for participating in the PogChamps event. Kudos to both of them for this titanic battle, and a draw seems like the fair result in the end. Normally, in an immortal game, one of the players plays their immortal, but I think both of them played an immortal game today. So, congratulations to Nate, congratulations to Leslie, and we hope to see them playing chess in the future.